For the sixth time, I was forgotten for Christmas. Not postponed, not rescheduled, forgotten. I spent the morning in my kitchen in Fort Collins with the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. It's pointed. The phone stayed still on the table, screen dark, like it had made up its mind. No message, no polite check-in, no excuse wrapped in a little holiday cheer. I watched the screen the way you do when you already know what it will say, and still hope it might surprise you. It didn't. I have lived in this house for over 40 years. I raised my son here. I buried my husband from here. I learned to sleep alone here. Really learned it the way you learn something only after it hurts long enough to become routine. I'm not fragile. I'm simply no longer loud about being hurt. The call came 2 days before Christmas, late afternoon, like an afterthought squeezed between errands. My son sounded relaxed, almost relieved. "We thought you had your own plans this year," he said, as if we'd agreed on it. I waited for the rest, for the small pause where an apology might live, for the awkward laugh that meant he realized what he'd done. It never came. Just the steady voice of someone already walking away from the moment. I told him I was fine. I told him to enjoy dinner. I didn't ask who was coming or what time they were eating. I didn't remind him this was the 6th year I hadn't been invited. I didn't explain that traditions don't fade on their own. They're left behind. When the call ended, the silence felt heavier, like it had weight now, like it had been placed there carefully. It occurred to me then that silence repeated often enough becomes a decision, not a misunderstanding, not a mistake, a choice made quietly so no one has to answer for it. I poured myself another cup of coffee and didn't drink it. I sat longer than I needed to, listening to the house breathe. In that stillness, something settled. I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. This wasn't about a dinner anymore. It was about what had been taken for granted and how easily I had let it happen. After my husband died, people told me time would soften things. What they didn't tell me was that grief rearranges power before anyone notices. My husband listened. My son asked. Even our disagreements had shape, edges you could hold on to. After the funeral, that shape disappeared, and the empty spaces got filled by decisions made without me. "I can handle that for you," my son said one afternoon, already standing by the mailbox with a stack of envelopes. He didn't wait for my answer. He never meant harm. That was part of the problem. Harm doesn't always announce itself. At first, I let it pass. I was tired. I was learning how to breathe in a room that no longer held my husband's voice. When someone offers help during grief, refusing feels rude, even ungrateful. So I said thank you. I nodded. I allowed it, and little by little, help began to sound less like support and more like permission already granted. Then his wife started coming by more often. She smiled easily, spoke softly, and touched my arm when she talked, as if we shared something delicate. The first few visits felt harmless, tea, small talk, and offer to tidy up a little. It was the kind of attention that looks like kindness from a distance. Up close, it felt like someone tracing the outline of your life with a finger, deciding where the edges should be. "We should get your papers organized," she said one day, already flipping through a folder on my kitchen table, "just to make things easier later." "Later?" I asked. "For who?" She laughed, light and quick. "For everyone." My son nodded beside her, as if this were sensible and settled. "It's better if we know where things are," he added, "in case something happens." Something had already happened. My husband was gone. The house had changed shape. The air did not hold the same warmth. I didn't need a reminder that life can turn suddenly. I needed space to be the one steering what remained. But they stood in my kitchen as if the loss gave them a new role, one I hadn't agreed to assign. They spoke in that careful tone people use when they believe they are being kind. Bills were paid before I knew they were due. Appointments were scheduled and then casually mentioned afterward, like updates on a project I'd assigned them. My house began to be discussed as if it were a shared responsibility, instead of the place I'd lived my entire adult life. My son would enter without calling first. We were nearby, already halfway through the door. His wife would smile and head straight for the kitchen, opening drawers as if muscle memory belonged to her. "Now I reorganize this," she said once, holding up a stack of envelopes I hadn't asked her to touch. It just made more sense. I remember nodding because correcting her felt petty. I told myself she meant well. I told myself grief made me oversensitive. I told myself it would settle. Another afternoon, I came home to find the hall closet emptied and refilled differently. "We figured this was better," my son said. No hesitation in the word we. "You don't use half this stuff anyway." It happened slowly enough that I didn't mark the moments as losses. A drawer here, a shelf there, decisions made before I knew there was a decision to make. When I pushed back, even gently, my son's face tightened. "We're just trying to help, Mom." And every time he said it, I felt the same quiet shift. Help stopped sounding like support and started sounding like control. Help became a way to step around my opinion without having to argue with it. My silence filled in for permission, not because I agreed, but because pushing back took energy I didn't always have. For years, I chose peace, wherever I could find it. I didn't see how often peace was being bought with small pieces of myself. That's why the Christmas call landed the way it did, not as a surprise, but as confirmation. I had been smoothing the gaps for too long, bridging omissions, pretending forgetting didn't mean forgetting, carrying the responsibility of making things feel normal. When my son texted later that night, "You sure you're okay?" I replied, "I'm fine. Nothing else, no smile, no follow-up." The silence that came after wasn't awkward. It was clean. I opened my laptop and searched for a place to stay. Not far, not fancy, just far enough to be unavailable. I booked a small cabin for the week of Christmas and closed the screen without second-guessing myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to be included. I was stepping out of the pattern. The cabin was small, just outside Estes Park, the kind of place meant for people who don't want to explain themselves. I didn't tell anyone exactly where I was going. I said I needed quiet, and for once, no one argued. No one tried to bargain. No one asked what I meant. They accepted it the way you accept weather. The first night passed easily. I slept through without waking, which felt like an accomplishment I hadn't realized I'd been chasing. In the morning, I made coffee and drank it while it was still hot. No one needed me to coordinate, confirm, or clean up after them. The silence felt earned, not lonely. My phone buzzed once that afternoon. "Everything okay?" my son wrote. I stared at it, then set the phone face down. I was okay. That wasn't the same thing as being available. Later, while unpacking, I came across the home security app on my phone. My husband had insisted on the system years ago after a neighbor's garage was broken into. He said it wasn't about fear, it was about peace of mind. I'd teased him for it back then, told him nothing ever happened in our neighborhood. After he died, I kept the system active out of habit. I rarely checked it. It felt like holding onto a conversation that had ended. I opened the app briefly. Everything looked normal. Front door locked, house quiet. I closed it again without thinking. That evening, my daughter-in-law texted, "Hope you're relaxing. How long are you planning to be away?" The timing prickled, not because the question was unreasonable, but because it wasn't wrapped in anything else. No, "How are you feeling?" No, "Enjoy your trip." Just the question, direct and tidy. I didn't answer. I turned the phone off and told myself the unease would pass. It didn't. The next morning, the messages came close together, like they'd been coordinated. My son, "How long are you planning to be gone?" His wife, "Do you remember which box has the old folders, the ones from after Dad passed?" Folders. Not mail, not bills, folders. I read it twice, then a third time. I typed a reply, "I'll look when I get back," and erased it. Something in me resisted giving them a timeline. Resisted confirming that my life still needed to be scheduled around their expectations. That's when I remembered the spare key. I'd given it to my son years ago when his father was still alive, back when it was practical. Emergencies. Being locked out, a pipe bursting, a sudden hospital trip. The key had made sense then. It had been given in a marriage, in a life where two people were watching the same horizon. A lot had happened since. By evening, I wasn't thinking about Christmas anymore. I was thinking about access. How easily it had been assumed, how casually it had been used. The old moments replayed with new meaning. The unannounced visits, the drawers opened like they belonged to someone else. The "we reorganized" and "we figured" that I'd swallowed because grief had made me tired. I turned the phone back on, opened the security app again, and watched the status screen as if the house itself could tell me what I'd been refusing to see. The alert came just after noon. Front door unlocked. I stared at the words, waiting for them to change, to correct themselves. I hadn't touched the door. I was hours away. I opened the camera feed. My son stepped into the hallway first, coat still on, keys already tucked away. His wife followed behind him, holding her. Phone, scanning the house like she was checking off a list. Neither of them hesitated. Neither looked surprised. "Did you check the study?" she asked, her voice faint but clear. "Yeah," he said. "Not there." They moved with the confidence of people who believed they belonged. My hallway, my living room, the house I'd lived in since before he learned to ride a bike, and they were searching. I watched them open drawers I hadn't opened in weeks. My daughter-in-law pulled the entry table drawer halfway out, rifled through folded notes and old warranties, then closed it with mild irritation. "These aren't it," she said. "Try the cabinet," my son replied. "Dad used to keep stuff there." Dad, not Mom. As if the history of the house belonged to him now, as if the important things were his to locate. He went into the study and unlocked the filing cabinet with a key he still had. He flipped through folders quickly, efficient like time mattered. Property taxes, utilities, insurance. Then he paused, frowning. "Where's the rest?" he asked. "What about the binder?" she said. "The blue one." The blue binder held papers from after my husband died, titles, insurance, things that didn't belong to casual curiosity or quiet raids. My hands went cold in my lap. I expected, oddly, to feel rage. What I felt was clarity, sharp and clean. "They're probably somewhere else," my son said. "She wouldn't take them with her," his wife replied. He nodded. "She never does." That sentence landed heavier than anything else, not because it was cruel, but because it was certain. Not a guess, a rule, a familiar pattern they'd counted on. They moved deeper into the house. Hall closet, kitchen drawer, a box pulled down and open like they had all day. They weren't whispering. They weren't rushing. They behaved the way people do when they believe no one is watching. "She really didn't tell us she was leaving," my son said. "No," his wife answered, "but she's gone. That's what matters." Gone. Like I was an inconvenience temporarily removed. Like my absence was permission. My thumb hovered over the call button. I could have stopped it with one word. I could have said my name and listened to them scramble for explanations. I didn't. I kept watching because I needed to see it without interruption, needed to let the truth finish forming in full sentences. They weren't checking on me. They weren't worried. They were searching. They were managing. They were treating my home like a space that became theirs when I wasn't inside it. When they finally left and the camera feed went still, I closed the app and sat with the quiet. It wasn't loneliness. It was resolve I drove home the next day. They arrived an hour after I got back, not together at first. My son came in alone, shoulders tight, eyes searching my face as if he needed to measure my mood before choosing his words. His wife followed a few minutes later, composed, purse strap in hand, calm like armor. "We didn't realize you'd be back so soon," she said. "I didn't announce my schedule," I replied. My voice surprised me, steady, unapologetic. My son cleared his throat. "We were just checking on things, making sure everything was okay." "I know," I said. "I watched." The room shifted, not loudly, just enough. His wife's grip tightened. "You watched us?" "Yes." Silence spread between us, and for once I didn't rush to fill it. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "I'm here to be clear. Help doesn't involve unlocking someone's door without asking." "We didn't think you'd mind," she said. I nodded once, acknowledging the truth of that belief without accepting it. "You have a spare key," I said. "You're returning it today." My son hesitated. "It's for emergencies." There are no emergencies that require searching through my files, I said, and there will be no more access without my permission. Not to my house, not to my paperwork, not to my finances. If I need help, I will ask. If I don't ask, the answer is no. His wife lifted her chin. That feels extreme. It feels new, I said. There's a difference. He placed the key on the table. The sound it made was small, but it landed like a door closing. They left without slamming anything, without a dramatic exit, just a careful distance that hadn't existed before. After they were gone, I changed the lock code and updated the access list. I moved my papers into a drawer only I open now. That night, I made dinner for myself and ate without checking my phone. I slept well. Love doesn't require constant access. Care doesn't mean control. And silence, when chosen, can be a boundary as strong as any locked door. I didn't get a Christmas invitation that year. What I took back was better. My dignity, intact and unquestioned.